Hi, it's Rebecca Whitman, your host of the Balanced, Beautiful, and Abundant Show. I'm a top-rated life coach, an international best-selling author, and a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm on a mission to help you go from burned out to balanced, beautiful, and abundant. The experts on this show will help you achieve work-life balance so that you can experience abundance in 7 pillars of life: spirituality, health, emotions, romance, mindset, social, and financial life. When you have all 7 pillars of life in alignment, you are balanced, beautiful, and abundant. Let's go. Welcome to the Balanced, Beautiful, and Abundant Show. I'm your host, Rebecca Whitman, taking you from burned out and overwhelmed to balanced, beautiful, and abundant. Today we have a very special episode. There's only 2 people, now you're the second, who have ever made a repeat, look, balloons are happening on Zoom, who have ever made a repeat appearance on the Balanced, Beautiful, and Abundant Show. One is my personal mentor, Sarah Zalecki, and now you are the second person who's made a repeat appearance on the show. So that should tell my audience how highly I think of you and how much respect I have for you and what you share in the world. So welcome again to the second guest appearance on the Balanced, Beautiful, and Abundant Show, Jason Forrest.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. I'm very flattered. I didn't know that was a I didn't know it was a repeat. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I cannot wait to tell my listeners about your amazing background. So, Jason created the top 2 sales development programs in the world as rated by global gurus. He is a master practitioner in NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is the science of influence and behavior change. He is also a practitioner in accelerated evolution, the psychology of removing fears in high performers. Jason is on a mission to ignite pride, purpose, and respect for the profession of sales. So, Jason, tell us a little bit of your origin story. How did you get into teaching sales? Did you start as a salesperson and then people asked you to be a manager and then you came up with all these great techniques? Tell us a little bit about how you got into teaching people how to be warrior salespeople.
Perfect. So my father, I'm 45, and so for the last 45 years, he's owned a jewelry store in Dallas, and so I grew up in that environment, just as a son of a small business owner, and learned, the importance of selling emotion and selling jewelry and selling diamonds, and so just really had lots of different sales jobs in my life, from jewelry sales to retail to big, huge homes, all kinds of different stuff. And then, yes, then went into sales management and training. My mom was a debate coach growing up. My Sunday school teacher was Zig Ziglar growing up. So I had just a lot of, I don't know, I had a lot of kind of sales influences when I was a kid. And I was very fortunate. I mean, my dad, back in those days, I mean, we listened to a lot of like self-help, Earl Nightingale and Zig Ziglar and that kind of stuff, right? Jim Rohn. So then fast forward, I became the head of national sales training for a Fortune 500 company, and it was then when I realized something that was very important to me, and I became obsessed, which I think is an important word. Became obsessed with, like, why are some salespeople very successful and some are not, if they're all taught the exact same thing. So if they're all taught, here's what to say, here's what to do, why is it that some people say it and some people do it and some people don't? And so I just kind of became obsessed with that. And that's what really got me into neuro-linguistic programming. It got me into strategic intervention, which is addiction counseling. So I actually went to a lot of things trying to figure out, like, how do people kind of break bad habits and break addictions. Got me as a trained hypnotherapist, and then got into accelerated evolution, which is, again, the psychology of removing fear and high performance. Because in the end, Rebecca, that's the main thing, is that it has nothing to, the main reason why people don't do something is just because they don't feel good about it. That's the simplest way to kind of explain it. And so, um, so if we can dissolve or change the emotional state or the emotions that are around the idea, then we can liberate them to do the things that they want to do but are too afraid to do.
Yeah, I think that fear is what is preventing people from being great in sales or anything that they dream of. Fear is something that gets in the way. So let's jump into, and we're going to talk about your book too, but I'm just curious, what are some of the strategies that accelerated evolution uses to remove fear in high performers? Because I think that's life changing right there for our audience.
Yeah. So again, I've said there's several modalities that I basically have, but like let's just kind of you know let's kind of like role play this for a second. So um, what would you say is like a fear that you think holds your people back or your clients from executing what you think they should do? What would be, is it a fear of coming across too pushy? Is it a fear? Is it public speaking fear, like stage fright fear? Is it fear of um, a fear of they have no problem saying this to a complete stranger, but they have a problem saying this to like a friend. Fear of selling to people that are like higher than their like net worth. Like they have a fear of like they're kind of richer or smarter than me, so I can't really, or older than me. What would you say kind of comes to mind?
I would say my clients have a fear of judgment, of becoming more visible on social media and putting their face on camera because they're scared that people are going to judge them and think they're like an idiot or don't know what they're talking about, or who are you to become more visible?
Perfect. Good. So if I was to coach a person like that, I mean, the first thing that we would say is, got it. Okay. So how does that make you feel? Like right now, if you were to, close your eyes and you were to, put your, let's say your truth out there, or you were to put your philosophy out there on social media for other people to hear and see and read about and how does that make you feel, right? And they were to say, well, it makes me feel scared. Okay. Well, how do you want to feel instead? Well, I want to feel, bold and brave. And then what we do is take them through a process called desensitizing or duplication. And so this is an interesting modality, and it uh, the simplest way to explain it and the fastest way to explain it is do you remember, Rebecca, when you were a kid, were you afraid of scary movies at all? Like, is there a movie that you can think of, like Nightmare on Elm Street or, Friday the
Yeah,
13th? Was there anything that kind of was like terrifying to you?
Salem's Lot.
Okay, perfect, good. Yeah, so the first time you saw it on a scale of 1 to 10 being scary, like how old were you and how scared, what rating would you give it?
I think I only saw it once, and that was probably the last scary movie I ever saw because I was probably 7 and it scared me so much. I was like, I'm not gonna ever watch another horror movie.
Okay, perfect, good. Yeah, so let's say that was a 10 out of 10, and it was so traumatic that it actually prevented you from ever embracing scary movies ever again. Okay,
Yes.
so that's actually a perfect metaphor for what we're talking about here, because you
Okay.
have something that's like hidden, buried, and suppressed around this one experience when you were 7 that is
Mm-hmm.
preventing you from potentially experiencing any other kind of related things that happen to do with that scary movie. Like, you know, let's say, you if you had children or whatever that wanted to experience something that was somewhat related to that, maybe a roller coaster or maybe a haunted house or maybe whatever it was. But it's like there's a lot of things that you're going to prevent yourself from even trying because of that one experience. Okay. Now, if you were to do that, if you were to watch that same scary movie, Rebecca, like 5 more times, it would go from scary to not scary to eventually kind of like, this is ridiculous. This is like laughable.
Okay.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I could
Like,
see that. I would get desensitized to it because I would know like where the scary parts were in the movie.
exactly. Yeah. So if you watch that movie today, okay, as an older version of you and not the 7-year-old version of you, The second time around, I promise you it would not have been as scary because you would anticipate what to happen. And then the third time you would be kind of bored with it. And then the fourth time you'd be like, I can't even believe I'm even like, why is anyone scared of this kind of thing? Right. So, and that's a normal human response when it comes to roller coasters or, I remember the first time that I was, I did zip lines and I was scared. And now I honestly um, I have to up the ante. So when I go ziplining now, I literally get permission to like cannonball off the zip line. Like I like swan dive and I like jump off. I do all kinds of things. I go backwards off zip lines because it's not scary anymore. Like just the normal like jump off or like drop off and zip is very boring to me. Right. Well, that's a perfect example of you desensitize yourself to something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that modality right there is one of the basic tenets of accelerated evolution, where I want to take something inside of a person that is hidden, buried, and suppressed. That in their current version of their life, they're projecting whatever that is in the past that's preventing them from doing something now that they want to actually do in the future.
That is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Accelerated evolution. Um, what are some of the common fears you see in the high performers that you coach?
I mean, like stage fright's a big one. So for example, Jerry Seinfeld says people would rather be in the coffin than doing the eulogy, which I think is a funny joke.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, think about it. Like, if a person can sell one on one in 1 hour, or they can sell one on 15 in 1 hour, that's a game changer, right?
Yeah.
But a person would hold themselves back or prevent themselves the opportunity of selling to 14 more people in the same exact hour because of something that it evokes inside of them. There's an emotional response that's evoked inside of them, and because it's so terrifying, and they feel insecure, they feel anxious, they get sweaty palms, they get dry mouth, they stutter, they stammer, all those kind of physiological responses come from that fear. And so because of that, they just don't do it. They just, oh, I can't do that. Well, that means that the salesperson, so you have two salespeople, one that has stage fright and one that doesn't. Well, that means that just in that 1 hour's worth of time, if they're competing against each other, one can get in front of 15, the other can get in front of one in the exact same amount of hours.
Yeah. So it's a
That's a game changer.
yeah, we said at the same time, it's definitely a game changer to get over these fears. I was so excited to dive into this book. It's a wonderful sales training book. If you haven't gotten it, definitely pick it up. We'll talk at the end how to get it. But let's talk about,
I have it. I own it myself. I own it myself.
well, Jason wrote this amazing book called The 12 Steps to Achieving a 100% Conversion Rate. Is that even possible? 100% conversion rate? And let's talk about some of the takeaways and the steps.
Well, first off, the reason why I want to say that, and I am the first, I believe, trainer in the entire world that's ever professed that, um,
Mhm.
is if we're not striving for 100%, then what are we striving for?
Yes.
And I mean that sincerely, because when normally it's like, hey, what kind of conversion rate is acceptable? And they go, I don't know, like, what's an acceptable amount of time that you should like kiss your wife? I mean, I don't know, like, I mean, it's just kind of a weird question, right? Or, how often should you say, I love you? It's just a weird thing. How about all the time? Like, how about every time you should say, I love you? So it's a weird question, but I think it's kind of created this almost kind of really low standard for people. Well, it's like, oh, well, like for in the B2B world, I mean, the industry average in the B2B world is like a 3% conversion rate, a 4% conversion. It's really low,
That is
so
very
uh,
low.
really low, right? So that's in the B2C world, like if you're a home builder or something, you're probably industry standard is probably more like 9 to 10%. If you're in-home services, like you go inside someone's house and you sell like a flooring or something like that, or window treatments, you're probably at like a 33 to 40% conversion rate. So they're a little bit higher on those in-home services. They're usually better salespeople in those in-home services as well. So it's different kind of standards. My point is that but if you ask them like what's an acceptable conversion rate, they're going to give you numbers like that. They're going to give you well, the industry average is 30%, so we strive for 40. Or the industry average is 5, we strive for 10. Or the industry average is 10, we strive for 15. I'm like, why aren't you striving for 100?
Yeah,
Why don't we do
exactly.
that? Right? So first, I think it's just a philosophical concept. And so everything that I really pride myself on, there's a Japanese word called dentatsu, and dentatsu means unique and unrivaled, the very best, blowing away the competition. And the idea is, and we know this from like the Lexus type stuff, Rebecca, right? Because their whole philosophy is dentatsu, and it's the pursuit of perfection, right? The
Yeah.
pursuit of perfection. And so that's kind of the idea is like, why don't we at least strive for that pursuit of perfection? And what does that look like? And then how do we reverse engineer that if we could get that, what would that look like? And why don't we attempt that every time? So when I sell anyone on any of my sales calls, my goal going in is I want to have a 100% conversion rate. Now, do I attain that? No, 100% no, but at least that's my intention. And my goal is what could I have said or done or thought about differently in that sales experience that could have increased my conversion rate? Like that is an important thing to do.
If your goal is 100% and you don't achieve it, how do you deal with not beating yourself up and saying, I didn't meet my goal? Because I know there's a lot of perfectionists and overachievers that listen to this call that are like, well, I don't want to set a goal that I can never hit.
But my feedback to that is you are already setting a goal. So whatever goal that you're setting, you are setting a goal. So you know what I mean. So if you're setting it, it's like I don't know if you had parents like this, but it's I would go home and tell my dad is like, hey, in order to get an A in this college class, all I need is a 75 on my final exam. And he's like, do not strive for that. So,
Yeah.
if you strive to 75, you're probably going to get lower than that. You're going to be in trouble. So why don't you strive for 100 and give yourself some margin of error there, right? So I just think that I just think I look I, okay. I think number one, there's nothing wrong with setting themselves up for setting up the highest possible goal. Okay, so we all should strive for that. I do not think it's possible for people to be perfect all the time, but I do, and I'm going to say this. Okay, this might be not acceptable right now, but I do believe that people can be perfect once,
Yeah, sure. I've
right?
achieved
And
that. I've had
yeah,
100%. Maybe a couple times in my 25 years of sales, I have had a 100% conversion rate. So it is possible. So yeah, why not strive for it
it's
every time?
possible.
Yeah.
So strive for it. And it's the same thing. It's like, it's like, what if I went to my wife and said, hey, I, I don't think it's possible to be a perfect husband, so I'm not even going to try for it.
That is a good, and I
Well,
love your wife. She's been on this podcast, by the way. If you're listening,
and
look up Mary
she
Forrest.
deserves perfect. She deserves
Good,
perfect, right? So,
good.
so now does that mean that it's possible? Am I going to fall and fail miserably? Yes. Do the circumstances change constantly? Does the environment change? The economy changes? Does every day present a new challenge that I'm not expecting? 100%, right? But still, the idea though is, how do I achieve that 100%, knowing that sure I'm going to fall short, but I'm not going to give myself an out. And that's the problem that I think people have right now is they go, well, I'm not even going to try for 100 because I don't want to set myself up for failure. And it's like you're already losing before you began.
Yeah, that is a good point.
That's the idea.
That's the idea of the title, of achieving 100% conversion rate. Let's talk about some of these 12 steps or big actionable items, because there's a lot of people listening to this show. Even if you're not in sales and you're listening to this show, you're in sales. I really believe that every conversation is a sales conversation because you're sharing your point of view, your philosophy, your opinion. So in every conversation, you're either selling or being sold. So everybody can benefit by these 12 steps to being a warrior salesperson. So, what are some of the big takeaways or actionable items that people can walk away with who are listening to the show right now?
Well, yeah. So with that, let me make it actually pretty simple for people. So there's really three parts of the sales process. It's the 5 steps to understand the customer's mission, the 4 steps to present solutions, and the 3 steps to resolve the sales. We call it the 5-4-3, but the 5 + 4 + 3 adds up to 12 in the public school system. So
Okay.
it's that's why we call it the 12-step process. But to keep it simple for people, though, uh, the best way I like to think about it is to use the metaphor of hell versus heaven versus purgatory. Okay, so if you think about to convince anyone to do anything, the first thing that you must do is you must get them to talk and experience what is their current hell.
Okay.
That's the first step. That's the first stage of selling, right? So it's whatever they're currently doing, whatever they're currently like, what is their current vendor, what is their current house, what is their current provider, what is their whatever it is, right? If you want to change their behavior, you have to get them to visualize and verbalize and experience what is how is that bringing them hell, right?
Mm.
That problem has to be painful enough for them to be open-minded to think about doing something different, right? So
Okay.
stage one is to take them through that experience. Then stage two is to give them a compelling alternative. So it's to get them to visualize what is that dream outcome? What is that fantasy? What is that, desire? What is that destiny? What is all of that? So again, I'm going to label that as heaven, right? And you've got to get them to again, not just talk about heaven, but they got to experience heaven. So in heaven, here's the key though. Heaven is not your product or service. That's
Hmm.
actually purgatory. Think about that. You're not, because if you sell them on your features, you're going to be like every other salesperson. If you can sell them on your fantasy, then you're a warrior. Then it's a different game for you, right? So your solution for them, your solution is purgatory, which means it's the journey, it's the process, it's the experience, it's the path that will get them from their current state of hell to that dream outcome, that heaven they want to go to. But a person's not going to go through that purgatory with you unless they're real clear about the hell they don't want to have anymore, and they're real clear about the heaven they want to have as a result of buying from you.
That is really valuable if you're listening. If somebody does not share their pain point, they're not open minded. Because if you ask people questions and they're like, everything's great, everything's perfect, you have nothing to sell them. Then you are being a pushy salesperson and pushing on them. But if you can ask the questions, that's where I think your NLP training is so important. Asking people questions, getting them to open up and share their pain, and then you offer them the solution. So let's talk
Yeah.
about, so what is the 5-4-3? What you just went over is what part of that equation?
The whole thing. So the first 5 steps are so step one is you must get position of strength. We teach a technique called the triple bind, and that basically just means I would say, hey Rebecca, there's a few, like in my case, there's a few. So we do 3 things, right? We do sales recruiting, we do sales training, we do fractional sales leadership. Those are the 3 things we do for companies. So let's
Mhm.
say you are interested in our recruiting services. Well, then in my triple bind would be something like, hey Rebecca, there's a few main problems why people like you are interested in an outside recruiting company. It's either number one, their current recruiter they're using is not providing them great candidates. Their internal kind of HR type recruiting processes are not attracting the right people. Or number 3 is that the people they have hired recently aren't really making it as a salesperson, and maybe they're thinking they're hiring the wrong people. So I'm curious, of those 3 problems, which is your biggest problem that's caused you to have a conversation with me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the reason why I like to ask questions like that. They're called binding questions. It is a very NLP thing to do that. Is that the mistake that most salespeople make is they ask too many open-ended questions, which is
Mm.
interesting because that's like the big thing all sales trainers teach. I don't teach that, but all sales trainers really teach ask more open-ended questions. Well, the problem, Rebecca, with open-ended questions is it presupposes that the person that in front of you already knows what they want and why they want it and how they're going to get it. But that's not normal though. Most customers, when you're talking to them, are early on in that initial discovery, and they're trying to figure out, and they don't necessarily know what they don't know. They don't know. And so you have to take them through a series of like multiple choice style questions. You want A, B, or C. You have to like take them through this
Yeah.
experience that makes it easy for them to answer and almost kind of do a self-discovery through your guidance. And that's very important. So if you were to say, because think about the opposite. I go, hey, so how can I help you? I'm not really sure. I'm just interested in your services. Okay. Well, what specifically are you interested in? Well, I'm interested in your recruiting. Okay. Well, what kind of recruiting program are you looking for? I don't know. What do you have? I mean, it's like you see what I'm saying? It's like too
Yeah.
difficult to answer that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so 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 a big philosophy that I have that we teach our people, our clients is is only ask questions that are very easy for your customers to answer.
That is a
But if
good
it's too
point.
difficult for them to answer, then they'll stop their own conversation because you never want, this is important, you never want, Rebecca, the buying experience to be painful.
Mm.
And if it's too difficult for them to figure out how you can help them or what their problem is or what their fantasy is or what their heaven looks like, and it's too difficult for them to kind of figure that out, well, they'll just say, you know what, I'll put this thing off and let me do some thinking about it. Let me go back. So anytime someone says, I need to think about it, or this has been a good conversation, I need to kind of like process all this stuff, what they're saying is there's some sort of like hidden, buried, suppressed, unresolved issue that you haven't really helped them uncover, and they don't really know where to go next. And so they just need to kind of procrastinate, and that's their kind of like coping mechanism of, okay, I don't know what else to do, so I'll let me think about it and I'll let you back.
So, what is a way that you can overcome that objection if they say, Jason, this has been a great conversation. I've learned so much from you. Thank you for your time. I just need to think about this and process it, or talk to my spouse about it and get back to you. What is your way to overcome that objection?
Perfect. Yeah. So one, just remember, first off, it's when that once that objection happens, it's very possible um, in the future you needed to do stuff before it even got to that problem. So that's
Yeah.
number one. So keep that in mind, okay? Because
Mm.
there's definitely protocols that we can do to solve that after it's been said, but it's way easier to anticipate that they are going to say that, and how do we do some things before that actually happens, okay? But let's just say they do say that. Then you would just be prepared and you would say, I totally understand. Usually, in my experience, when someone like you says they have to think about it, it's usually because of some sort of unresolved question that I kind of missed or could that the person has. And so I'm curious, do you have any questions regarding the product that we're talking about? Do you have any questions regarding, the clarity on the problem you're trying to solve? You said you're trying to solve the problem of blank. Is that the real problem, or is there a different problem you're really wanting to solve? You said that you had, so what you're basically doing is you're kind of backtracking and you're going through what are all of the micro decisions that a person needs to make the overall decision of, am I going to kind of pursue this relationship and move on and take this kind of next step, right? Because that's what's really happening. When they say I need to think about it, it's like there's an insecurity or an uncertainty, and they feel like there's something like in their gut, they feel like there's something unresolved and they don't know what it is. And so you're trying to go back and trying to pull that stuff out of them.
Do you believe that time and money are never the issue? It's all about creating value?
I do believe that time and money is not the issue. It's all about making them experience hell as much as possible, and it's all about making them experience heaven as much as possible. And if people have enough hell and heaven in their life, then they will do anything they can for the purgatory journey of that. So, so I do believe that 100%. So now I also believe, though. Hold on, let me make sure I'm clear on this. I believe in not ever manipulating a person to do something that is going to create any sort of level of cognitive dissonance in them. Um,
Right.
so we have a 4.9 Google review, hundreds of reviews. We were very big on making sure that we only want to convince people to do something that is truly going to like serve them at the highest possible level. And so so we are a very assertive sales organization, and I teach assertive selling. But that's only in the case that it's mutually beneficial for them and for us. So that is important to me.
Yeah, that's very important. That is, I read the beginning of the book. I reread it last night. The three archetypes of salespeople, right? Let's talk about those. One of them that you just referred to as being a servant, and then what are the other two?
Sure. So it's servant, protector, leader. So this is a really cool thing to think about for your own self. So again, a warrior is really all three of these things. It's a servant, protector, leader. A warrior is just kind of the best version of us. It's the most self-reliant, self-confident, self-efficacious version of ourselves. That's really what a warrior is. So it's a person who doesn't have excuses, that says, I succeed or I fail, it's all on me. It's I am the problem, I am the solution. I mean, that's really what the warrior mindset's all about. So um, but anyone can have, it's not like a masculine thing. I mean, anyone can be, a warrior. It's just, again, it's the best version of us. So, but inside of that, there are three selling archetypes. So the servant, and when I'm saying these things, listen to this and then decide kind of what you are, and I'll tell you what the downside of that is, because they all have a downside. So, so the servant archetype is, I am here to truly understand my customers, fears, their failures, their frustrations, their desires, their dreams, their destiny. I'm truly here to, again, serve at the highest possible level and really get down to that kind of emotional kind of why of everything, right? That's the servant. The protector archetype is I'm really going to protect you from your own insecurities. I'm going to protect you from your family members that tell you not to do this. I'm protecting you from the media, from sometimes the competition that are manipulating you to buy something different than us. Like, I'm going to protect you from yourself. I'm going to protect you from a lot of things, right? So that's the protector. The protector really knows the competition. They really know kind of the inadequacies of the alternatives out there. And then last is the leader, and that's someone who's like, you know what, I'm all about following a process, following a system of decisions, taking a person from A to Z in like a methodical kind of orderly way to kind of get to resolution. That's really that leader archetype. Okay. So let's have fun, Rebecca. So of the three, which one would you say is your dominant, and which one would you say is the one that's dormant? It doesn't mean you can't improve it. It's just kind of one you don't really think about as much.
Wow, I'd say my dominant one is leader, and my dormant one is protector.
Okay. So this is kind of the fun to think about. So they're all great, and they're all, they all have a shadow self that kind of holds you back. So so you said the leader is your dominant. So if the leader is your dominant and you're less dominant on the protector, and then maybe even the servant, like you said protector is your least dominant, then you could come across sometimes as like robotic or fixed and not as flexible as you need to. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the leader. The protector, if a person's too dominant on the protector side, they could come across very dogmatic.
Mm.
Like it's, like it almost like make a person feel bad that they're kind of asking dumb questions, kind of thing. So it's like, why am I so smart compared to you, kind of thing, right? So that could be the protector. Um, and then the servant could come across as the pushover, and can get into the deadly, what we call friend zone of selling, where they like you, they somewhat trust you, but they don't respect you enough to do business with you, and so they end up going with your competition, who has more of that protector leader in them, even though you might have helped them uncover their fears and their emotions and their frustrations and their why, but you didn't give them enough container of safety or structure on how to get out of that. So um, so again, they're all great, And the way that I tell people is, if you were to kind of give yourself a fun little assessment of a scale of 1 to 100, on leader, 100 on protector, 1 to 100 on servant. And let's say your total score was like, I don't know, 150 out of 300 based upon the scores, right? Well, what I would say is 150 out of 300 equals your current conversion rate.
Mm.
So your current conversion rate is like, let's say 1 in 10, right? Then again, the presupposition there would be how do you add strength to these other areas of dormancy, and therefore that would increase your conversion rate. Why? Because um, each prospect in front of you is going to respond better to a different archetype.
Yes.
So, right? So some customers prefer and need, not prefer, some customers need more of the protector. Some customers need more of the servant, and some customers need more of that leader to kind of give them that structure when they're all over the place. So they're all very valuable. And my belief system is very strongly that the reason why we lose sales is because we're not adapting our archetype to the customer in front of us, or even where they are in the stage of the buying process.
Very valuable information. So, what are some of the mental leashes that hold people back? What does that mean, a mental leash?
So a mental leash is that's basically the same concept we talked about earlier with the fear. So there's 4 types of leashes, and I wrote about this in the book before Warrior Selling, called The Mindset of a Sales Warrior. And there's 4 types of leashes. There's stories, self-image, reluctances, and rules. And so these are 4 types. These are really, really cool to think about. Again, I wrote an entire book on it, 42 strategies on how to overcome that stuff. Uh, but a story would be like a fiction story would be something like, the reason why I'm not selling more than I am right now is because of the economy, or because there's a presidential election, or because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
woman, or because I'm a man, or because I'm whatever, right? So I'm too young, I'm too old, whatever. Those are all like stories that we make up. Okay, so that's a story. The next one, the next leash is a rule. And a rule is anything that we see, feel, or hear that holds us back from executing. So it's like, well, the reason why I haven't followed up with them yet, Rebecca, is because it's only been like 24 hours. And I feel like if I call them within a day, I feel like it's kind of coming across too salesy or pushy. Okay, well, how many days do you need to wait before you call them back? Well, I mean, I think 4 days is good. Well, where did that even come up? I mean, who came up with 4 days? You know what I mean? Like, so you ask one person 4, one person's a day, one person's 10 days, you know what I mean? These are the rules people have. The third is self-image. So self-image is your sense of worthiness. It's, do you believe that you're a salesperson? Do you identify as a salesperson? Do you believe you're worth 100% conversion rate? Do you believe you're enough? Do you believe you're worth, $100,000 a year, $1 million a year, et cetera? So that's self-image. And then the last is your what did I say? Stories, self-image,
Structure.
reluctances. And there's actually 16 types of reluctances, Rebecca, and that's that stage fright I was talking about earlier. That upmarket client, selling to upmarket clientele, asking for referrals, selling over Zoom, selling over Facebook. Those are all, like, think about how many people, Rebecca, refuse to turn their cameras on Zoom.
Crazy.
It's crazy, right? Like, I mean,
I
I've been
mean,
in so
some
many
people,
meetings.
they
Yeah.
don't even answer me. Like, because I do group sales presentations on Zoom, they won't turn their camera on and they won't even unmute. They're that timid.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it. So that's that, but that's a reluctance because what they're saying is, I'm afraid, and this is kind of a crazy thing to say, but what they're saying is, if I turn my camera on, I am worried about how you're going to see me because I don't like how I look,
Hmm.
right? So I'm not proud of how I look on camera, and therefore you must not be proud of how I look on camera. So therefore, you're going to kind of think less of me or judge me or not value me as much based on how I look. So therefore, you're only going to hear my voice. You're not going to see my face. That's a leash that people have.
You think it could be someone who's sales averse, thinking like, if I show you my face and you connect with me eye to eye, soul to soul, then you're going to be able to sell me on something, versus keeping their camera off as like keeping their walls up, or keeping keeping me at arm's length?
I mean, sure, that definitely could be the belief system on the prospect side.
Yeah.
I was referring to salespeople though,
Yeah.
that don't turn their cameras on.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
so, uh, so,
Definitely.
um, but yeah, no, I definitely think, I mean, in the end, it's just an insecurity. That's all it is. It's an insecurity. It's a limiting belief. It's an outdated belief. It's a belief that's not serving them. It's a belief that's not helping them. And I think I'm just kind of obsessed with that stuff. I'm obsessed with anything in my life that's it's bringing me stress and therefore not joy. I want to eradicate from my life. Like I'm really big on that. So I do a lot of I spend a lot of money for coaching. Mary and I spend a lot of money for coaching. Every single week we're being coached by a coach, and we're constantly attacking our fears. I mean, one of the best practices that I do, and I'll share this with you guys, is I take myself through self practices where I actually look at my calendar. This is good. I mean, think about this right now. So if you were to like open up your calendar and you were to look at all the stuff you got to do in the next week, right? And you really look at it. I got to do this. I got to do this. Personal, professional, all this kind of stuff, right? And you bring it to your attention, and then you say, "How does that make me feel?"
Mm.
Well, it makes me feel very nervous and anxious, which is why I don't even like looking at my calendar a week in advance. I like to avoid it. I like to just ignore it because I don't want anyone to feel that way. Well, what I would say is that's not a life worth living. So you need to not let something like your to-do list or your calendar have that much power over you, because that's not fun. And that's preventing you from probably living a better life that you could live. And so the practice that I have is I actually I used to procrastinate towards that. I used to be one of those people that avoided my calendar because I didn't want to see what it looked like. And now I just go through the practice of going through it, looking at it, and I do a self process around looking at my calendar. How does it make me feel? And I kind of duplicate myself, and it makes me feel anxious, it makes me feel worried. Perfect. How do I want to feel instead? I want to feel like it's no big deal. I want to feel confident, secure, etc. Great. Okay. So so then what you do, the way that you actually do this kind of process is that you would fully embrace it. So I would say, okay, so right now I want to close my eyes. I want to fully embrace the anxiety and the worry that I have about the upcoming activities this week. And when I feel those upcoming activities, how does that make me feel in my body? So where is it? Well, it's making me my heart pound. I'm getting kind of a little tense in my arms, my shoulders. Perfect. So magnify that, intensify that, make that as big as you possibly can. And when you kind of feel that body sensation of tenseness and anxiety, or tenseness and anxious and tightness in your chest, now what thoughts are arising? Well, my thoughts now are, this is um, this is crazy that I'm thinking like this. I can't believe I'm thinking like this. Okay, so think the thoughts. This is crazy. I'm thinking like this. Think it over and over and over again. And now when you think the thoughts, this is crazy, I'm thinking like this. What's the new emotion that's coming up? Well, the new emotion that's coming up is, um, it's not anxious anymore. It's more like, I don't know, just unsettling. Okay, so that's the process. So the idea behind is you're duplicating, in this case. There's many processes, but that will be duplicating and kind of going back from, again, the negative thoughts to the negative emotions, the negative body sensations, and then if you really kind of fully embrace it, it'll keep looping until it desensitizes and gets to something neutral. Like eventually you want to be neutralized, where I don't really feel anything now. I kind of feel indifferent. That's great. You could stop at indifference, or you could actually change it. You could say, okay, so now that I feel indifferent, like a difference is coming up in me, that's interesting. So, you know, um, now that I feel indifferent, like what's what's the next kind of thought or feeling that's coming up? And eventually you'll get to, all right, I'm kind of looking forward to this. Like like this sounds good. Like I feel good.
Wow, you heard it here, guys. We're all about going from overwhelmed to balanced, beautiful, and abundant. And in that process, Jason told you exactly how to do it. So let's end with this very potent question. This is your life mission. How do you ignite pride, purpose, and respect to sales and the sales leadership profession? I think this is such an important mission because certain people look down on sales, and they're like, oh, I don't want to come off as too salesy, and I could never sell. Like, there is somewhat of a stigma to being a salesperson, even though it is the highest paid profession in the world after professional athletes and movie stars. So tell us, how are
Yeah.
you bringing this pride, purpose, and respect to the profession?
Sure. So step one is it's a lot of just re-education. So, my belief system is people don't have a problem with sales people. They have a problem with unhelpful, unethical, and boring salespeople. So they have a
Mm,
problem with con artists. They have a problem with crooks, right? So one, it's just kind of reframing the idea that we don't have a problem with salespeople. We have a problem with bad salespeople. We have a problem with crooked salespeople. And those aren't actually salespeople. Those are con artists, right? So that's number one. So just what I tell people is that, igniting the pride, purpose, and respect is just to say, hey, let's desire to be best at that. Let's be best. Let's be best in class. Let's start every day with the goal of, I want to give every customer the greatest show on earth. And I really do believe that. I mean, I really, like, when I talk to my potential customers, my goal is, how do I give you the greatest show on earth today? How do I give you, a sales experience that that again, I'm ranked 6th in the world right now, so I'm not number one, but it's like, how do I give you something that's the best you've ever had before? And I want that, right? So I think it's just that mission. I will tell you, and this is something I say a lot that people think it's kind of funny to think about, is if you really strive to be really, really great at something, it's exhausting. And a lot of salespeople, when I ask them, I'll go, how many like pitches do you do a day? And they'll go, I don't know, I got like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm like, you're not very good at what you do. And they go, what do you mean? Because you cannot give excellence 10 times a day.
hmm
So like in my company, I only allow my salespeople 2 new pitches a day. That's it. Because my expectation is that sales call, we only book an hour, but they're required to have an hour break afterwards, because the goal is, how do I keep that customer on the phone for another hour, even though they only gave me an hour? Not because I'm holding you hostage, Rebecca, but because it's such an enjoyable experience that you want to do whatever you can to free up the next hour of your life to spend more time with me.
So you tell
So that's
your
the game.
salespeople to book out 2 hours for a sales call?
I tell them that the client only knows it's an hour, but they block 2 hours for every
Wow,
sales call.
incredible.
Yeah. And one of the ways that we hold them accountable is, how many of your how many new prospects did you get to spend more than an hour with you? That's one of the ways that's one of our KPIs. So,
Incredible.
because that's fun. I mean, that shows that, I mean, that's the opposite. I mean, that's the opposite of what every other salesperson expects, right? Every other person on the planet's like, how fast can I get off this call? This call is a waste of my time. There's no way I'm going to give you an hour. I'll give you 5 minutes. Sounds great. I'm going to take that 5 minutes. I'm going to turn it into 2 hours.
Okay, I love that. That's true
So
rapport. That's truly a rapport and friendship, because if somebody's giving you 2 hours of their time, they're really enjoying the connection. So I love that as a key performance indicator.
well, they're enjoying the connection, and again, time's more valuable than money, right? So you're giving them something that is worth that precious minute that they have. Those minutes are so valuable. So that's my biggest competitor. I mean, my biggest competitor is the minutes that you're going to give me, and whatever else is competing against those minutes. And so I just got to make sure that, my standard for myself is better than whatever alternative you're trying to get off the phone with me on.
And you still sell,
So
even though you're running this big sales training business, are you still selling yourself?
I do. I probably take 5 new prospects a week.
And you love
So
it?
I do. And the reason why I do it, for a couple of reasons. One is, I just think you have to lead by example, like anything in life. And number two is, that's where I get all of my material, honestly. Like, I mean, the only reason why I'm continuing to create new material that's better than yesterday is because I'm not philosophizing about it. I'm actually doing it, So I'm doing what I teach, and then I kind of make adjustments and go, okay, yep, this is a better approach. Try this next time. Da 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 da. And so it's just better. And you can't ever hold a standard to your team if you're not willing to hold yourself to the same standard, right? So when I tell my team, my expectation is you have 100% conversion rate. Um, they can't just they if they push back and they go, Jason, that's impossible. I go, I'll try it. Let me see. Let me take the next customer. Or, people aren't going to do anything because of blank, 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 Jason. Okay, let me see if I can handle it. Right. So you have to kind of throw yourself out there and be vulnerable to fail in order to, in order to break those kind of glass paradigms that people have that should not, that should be easily broken. But the leader themselves is kind of too chicken, unfortunately, to throw themselves out there because of whatever self-image issues they've got going on, So we just have to all be willing to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable, and so
There's a saying, those who can't do it, teach it, and those who can't teach it, write about it. Well, you, Jason, are doing all three. You are doing the do, you're teaching it, and you're writing about it. And that is why you are the second guest out of 200 to ever make a second appearance on the Balanced, Beautiful, and Abundant show. Thank you so much for being on the show and everything you shared. I know my listeners are going to want to stay in touch. So where can they find this amazing book, and where can they find you online?
Sure. So it's on Amazon. So Warrior Sons on Amazon, as well as Mindset of a Sales Warrior. Also, fpg.com is our website. So Forrest Performance Group, fpg.com. And I just launched a YouTube channel, just Jason Forrest Sales Coach. So that's the YouTube, Jason Forrest Sales Coach. I'm doing a lot of shorts right now. I'm doing like kind of 4 or 5 shorts a week. I think that's kind of a fun place to start, in the sense of like, how can I teach something in 60 seconds or less? So it's kind of a fun challenge for me. So I'm doing a lot of those. So definitely check out the shorts and, see if I can teach you something in 60 seconds or less.
Well, I'm definitely going to start listening to your YouTube videos. And everybody, thank you for listening. Because of my amazing listeners, we're in the top 0.5% of all self-help podcasts in the world. If you haven't already left a 5-star review, subscribed, and shared this with a friend, go ahead and take 60 seconds out of your day and do that for me. It would mean so much. Thanks again, guys, for listening to this incredible podcast that's taking people around the globe from burned out to balanced, beautiful, and abundant. And until we meet again, keep your vibe high and magnetize. Bye, everyone. Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for being a devoted listener to the Balanced, Beautiful, and Abundant show. I so appreciate your subscription, your reviews, sharing this podcast with your friends. And if you feel called to work with me on a personal level, I want to invite you to my Elegant Warrior training. It is starting in mid-January. I will personally help you get all 7 areas of your life to a level 10. That includes your spirituality, your emotions, your romantic life, your financial life, get your mindset on track, make sure you have a great community. And this is a 7-week group coaching class. If you want to learn more about it or just meet me, I would love for you to schedule a complimentary breakthrough call. My schedule is very full this year, but I have opened 3 spots this week to talk to you and just see where you need a breakthrough, where are you feeling stuck in your life. Maybe you need to lose a few pounds, maybe you're tired of being single, or maybe you're ready to double and triple your finances. So wherever you feel stuck, I'm committed to helping you have a breakthrough on this coaching call. Go ahead and click the link in the show notes in the link tree to schedule that breakthrough call. And if you're interested in learning more about Elegant Warrior training, I am happy to talk to you about it live, or you can always reach out through my email. Talk to you soon. Keep rocking your goals and keeping your vibe high, and I'll see you next week with another incredible guest.